What if Stannis Baratheon had won the Battle of Blackwater Bay and taken King's Landing from Joffrey? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The sun beats down mercilessly on Blackwater Bay as Stannis Baratheon's fleet cuts through the dark waters toward King's Landing. From the deck of his flagship, the rightful king watches the Red Keep's towers grow larger against the afternoon sky. Every sail bears the crowned stag of House Baratheon, and the sight fills him with grim satisfaction. Davos Seaworth stands beside his king, weathered hands gripping the ship's rail. The Onion Knight's eyes narrow as he studies the waters ahead. Something feels wrong about the lone ship drifting towards them. "My king!" Davos calls out, his voice urgent. That ship ahead. No crew visible, and she's riding too low in the water. Stannis follows his admiral's gaze. The vessel approaches slowly, unmanned sails catching the wind. But Davos has served him well through countless battles, and the man's instincts have saved them before. "Signal the fleet," Stannis commands. "All ships, hard to port, full sail." The flagship's crew springs into action. Signal flags snap in the breeze as horns sound across the water. Davos barks orders to the helmsman, and the great ship groans as it turns away from the drifting vessel. The wildfire explosion comes moments later. Green flames erupt from the lone ship in a column that reaches toward the heavens. The blast echoes across the bay like thunder, and even at their safe distance, the heat washes over them in waves. Where a dozen ships might have been caught in the trap, only empty water burns with unnatural fire. "Tyrion Lannister," Stannis says, his jaw tight with cold fury. The dwarf thinks himself clever. But the trap has failed. His fleet remains intact, nearly 200 ships strong. The men cheer as they watch the wildfire burn itself out on the empty waves. Davos turns to his king with a rare smile. "Shall we show them what happens when you try to burn the rightful king of Westeros?" Stannis draws his sword. The steel catches the light of the dying flames. "Signal the attack. All ships, advance." Meanwhile, atop the walls of King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister watches his carefully laid plan crumble before his eyes. The wildfire burns uselessly on empty water, while Stannis' fleet bears down on the city like a storm. "Seven hells," he mutters, his mind already racing toward new strategies. The chain across the harbour mouth will slow them, but not for long. Not with that many ships. Beside him, Sir Mandon Moore adjusts his white cloak against the wind. The Kingsguard knight's face remains as cold and lifeless as ever. "What are your orders, my Lord Hand?" Tyrion studies the approaching fleet. Each ship bristles with armed men. Grappling hooks and siege ladders gleam in the sun. This will not be a battle won through tricks and wildfire. "Send word to his grace," Tyrion says. "The real fighting begins now." The battle for Blackwater Bay erupts in chaos. Stannis' ships smash through the harbour chain like it is made of paper. Grappling hooks fly through the air as vessels clash together in the narrow waters. Men scream and die as steel rings against steel. From his ship's prow, Stannis leaps onto the first dock with Lightbringer blazing in his hand. The enchanted sword cuts through Lannister soldiers like they are made of straw. Behind him, his Stormlands knights pour onto the quays in a tide of steel and fury. Davos fights beside his king, his own sword finding gaps in enemy armor with the precision of long experience. Around them, the docks run red with blood as Stannis' men carve their way toward the Red Keep. "The Mud Gate!" Stannis roars over the sound of battle. "Take the Mud Gate!" His men surge forward like a breaking wave. Battering rams appear as if by magic, massive oak beams bound with iron. The gate shudders under the first blow, then the second. On the third strike, the ancient wood splinters and breaks. Stannis himself leads the charge into the city. His sword blazes with Rahala's fire as he cuts down any man foolish enough to stand in his way. The crowned stag banners follow him through the streets as his army spreads throughout King's Landing like wildfire. Meanwhile, in the throne room of the Red Keep, young King Joffrey paces before the Iron Throne like a caged animal. His golden crown sits askew on his sweaty head, and his hand keeps moving to the sword at his side. "Where is my grandfather?" he demands for the 100th time. "Where is Lord Tywin?" Cersei watches her son with growing dread. Through the tall windows, she can hear the sounds of battle drawing closer, steel clashing against steel, men screaming, the smell of smoke drifting on the wind. "He will come," she says, though her voice lacks conviction. "Your grandfather always comes." But the hours pass, and no relief arrives. The sounds of fighting grow louder, closer. The great doors of the throne room shudder as something heavy strikes them from outside. Tyrion bursts through a side entrance, his armor bloodied and his face grim. "Your Grace, we must go. Now. Stannis has taken the Red Keep." "No!" Joffrey screams, his voice cracking with fear and rage. "I am the king! I am the king!" The great doors explode inward. Stannis Baratheon strides into the throne room with Lightbringer in his hand and 50 knights at his back. His armor bears the dents and scratches of hard fighting, but his eyes burn with righteous purpose. Joffrey draws his sword with shaking hands. "You dare draw steel in the presence of your king?" "I see no king here," Stannis replies, his voice cold as winter. "Only a bastard pretender who murdered Eddard Stark and plunged the realm into war." Sir Mandon Moore steps forward, his white cloak pristine despite the chaos around them. But before he can draw his sword, 3 Stormlands knights surround him with steel at his throat. Cersei's hand moves to the hidden vial of poison at her neck. She glances toward young Tommen, who huddles behind a pillar with wide, frightened eyes. Better to die with honor than suffer whatever justice Stannis has planned. "I wouldn't," Davos Seaworth says quietly, having approached unseen. His weathered hand rests on the Queen's wrist with surprising gentleness. "Your boy needs his mother, even if she is yours." Stannis advances on the Iron Throne step by measured step. Joffrey swings his sword in wild arcs, but the boy has never faced a true warrior. Stannis catches the blade with his own, twists, and sends Joffrey's weapon spinning across the floor. "Kneel," Stannis commands. The would-be king's legs give out beneath him. He collapses before the Iron Throne, sobbing and pleading for mercy he has never shown to others. Stannis Baratheon, the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms, ascends the iron steps. His boots ring against the metal as he climbs towards the seat that has been his by right since Robert's death. The twisted swords of the throne seem to part before him like a dark sea. When he turns to face the assembled court, Lightbringer blazes in his hand like a piece of the sun itself. Every person in the room falls to their knees. "I am Stannis of House Baratheon, first of my name, rightful king of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the first men, lord of the 7 kingdoms, and protector of the realm," he declares, his voice echoing off the ancient stones. "Let all who hear these words know that the usurper's line ends today." Outside the throne room, the last pockets of resistance crumble. Lannister banners burn in the courtyards as the crowned stag of Baratheon rises over the Red Keep. In the distance, the bells of King's Landing ring out across the city, announcing the dawn of a new age. But in the chambers of Maegor's Holdfast, Sansa Stark huddles by her window and watches the smoke rise over the capital. For the first time since her father's death, she allows herself to hope. Perhaps the nightmare is finally ending. Perhaps justice has come to King's Landing at last. The great sept of Baelor burns against the morning sky as Stannis Baratheon prepares to claim his throne with fire and blood. Smoke rises from the ancient sept's 7 towers, while Melisandre stands before the flames with her arms raised in prayer to Rella. The Red Priestess's voice carries across the city as she proclaims the dawn of a new age. The night is dark and full of terrors, she chants, her red robes billowing in the heat. But the fire burns them all away. From the steps of the Red Keep, Stannis watches the sept burn with grim satisfaction. The faith of the Seven has held sway over Westeros for centuries, but no more. The Lord of Light has delivered him victory, and now the old gods must make way for the new. Davos Seaworth approaches his king with careful steps. The Onion Knight's weathered face shows concern as he watches the flames consume the holy place. "Your Grace," he says quietly, "burning the sept may turn the people against us. They've worshipped the Seven for generations." "The people will learn to worship the true God," Stannis replies, his voice hard as iron. "Or they will burn with their false idols." Behind them, the throne room of the Red Keep bustles with activity as Stannis's men prepare for the coronation ceremony. The Iron Throne sits empty, waiting for its rightful king. Banners bearing the crowned stag of House Baratheon hang from every pillar, replacing the golden lions that ruled here for so long. Meanwhile, in the dungeons beneath the Red Keep, Joffrey Baratheon huddles in a cell that once held his enemies. The boy who called himself king now wears chains instead of a crown. His golden hair is matted with dirt, and his royal clothes torn from the fighting. Tyrion Lannister sits in the cell across from him, his own chains clanking as he shifts on the stone floor. The dwarf's clever mind works furiously, searching for some way out of their predicament. But for once, his silver tongue may not be enough to save him. "Uncle," Joffrey whimpers, his voice cracking with fear. "What will he do to us?" Tyrion studies his nephew with calculating eyes. The boy who ordered Ned Stark's execution and plunged the realm into war now seems like exactly what he is. A frightened child who never understood the weight of a crown. "He will give us justice," Tyrion says finally. Stannis Baratheon is many things, but he is fair. Harsh, but fair. The sound of boots on stone echoes through the dungeon as guards approach their cells. Sir Richard Horpe, one of Stannis's most trusted knights, stops before Joffrey's cage with a ring of keys in his hand. "His Grace commands your presence," Horpe announces. "Both of you." They are led through the Red Keep's corridors under heavy guard. Courtiers and servants line the halls to watch the fallen Lannisters pass. Some whisper behind their hands, while others openly stare at the boy who ruled them so cruelly. The throne room has been transformed since Stannis claimed it. Hundreds of lords, knights, and common folk pack the great hall. The Iron Throne looms above them all, its twisted metal gleaming in the light of 1,000 candles. Stannis sits upon the throne in his finest armor, the crown of kings upon his brow. Lightbringer rests across his knees, its flames dancing along the enchanted steel. To his right stands Melisandre in flowing red robes. To his left, Davos Seaworth bears the staff of the hand. The prisoners are forced to their knees before the throne. Joffrey trembles as he looks up at the man who has taken everything from him. "Joffrey of House Baratheon," Stannis declares, his voice echoing through the hall. "You stand accused of usurpation, murder, and treason against the rightful king. How do you answer these charges?" "I am the king," Joffrey screams, spittle flying from his lips. "I am the true-born son of Robert Baratheon." A murmur runs through the crowd. Everyone present knows the truth of Joffrey's parentage. but few have heard it spoken so boldly. Stannis's jaw tightens with cold fury. You are the bastard born of incest between your mother and Jaime Lannister. You have no claim to this throne. Lies! Joffrey shrieks. All lies. The truth is not a lie, Melisandre interjects, stepping forward. R'hllor sees all. He sees the corruption that festered in this court, the false king who murdered the innocent. Stannis rises from the throne, Lightbringer blazing in his hand. Joffrey Waters, bastard of King's Landing, I sentence you to death for the murder of Lord Eddard Stark and for the crimes you committed while falsely wearing the crown. The blade falls swift and clean. Joffrey's head rolls across the stones, while his blood pools on the floor where he knelt. The throne room erupts in shouts and cries, but Stannis's face remains unmoved. Let all who hear witness know, he declares, justice has returned to the Seven Kingdoms. Next, Cersei Lannister is brought before the throne in chains. The former queen's golden hair hangs limp around her shoulders, and her green eyes burn with hatred and defiance. Cersei of House Lannister, Stannis intones, you stand accused of adultery, treason, and conspiracy against the crown. The penalty for these crimes is death. I regret nothing, Cersei spits, her chin raised proudly. I did what I had to do to protect my children. Your children are bastards born of sin, Melisandre declares. The Lord of Light demands justice for your crimes. But before Stannis can pronounce sentence, Tyrion Lannister speaks up from where he kneels beside his sister. Your Grace, he calls out, his voice carrying across the silent hall. I would speak for my sister. Stannis's cold eyes fix on the dwarf. You would defend her crimes? I would speak of mercy, Tyrion replies carefully. My sister loved her children, even if they were born of sin. Is love itself a crime, worthy of death? The king studies Tyrion for a long moment. Around them, the court holds its breath. Love does not excuse treason, Stannis says finally. But you speak wisely of mercy. Cersei Lannister, I sentence you to take the black. You will serve at a sept in the north, far from the corruption of this city, until the end of your days. Cersei's face crumples with grief and rage, but she says nothing as the guards lead her away. Now Tyrion stands alone before the Iron Throne. The dwarf who defended King's Landing against Stannis's assault awaits his fate with remarkable composure. Tyrion of House Lannister, Stannis begins, you fought well in defense of this city. You showed courage and cunning in the face of overwhelming odds. I was Hand of the King, Tyrion replies. I did my duty. Your duty to a usurper, Melisandre adds, her red eyes gleaming. The flames show me your heart, little man. You care nothing for kings or gods, only for the game itself. Stannis leans forward on his throne. Yet you fought with honor. You protected the innocent during the battle. You could have fled, but you stood your ground. What would you have me do? Tyrion asks with a slight smile. Run away and let the city burn? That would have served no one. The king nods slowly. You have a choice, Tyrion Lannister. Death for serving a false king, or life in service to the true one. I offer you the position of Hand. Gasps echo through the throne room. Lords and courtiers whisper frantically among themselves. To name a Lannister as Hand after defeating their house seems impossible. Tyrion's eyes widen with genuine surprise. Your Grace, I am honored, but surely there are others more worthy. There are none more capable, Stannis cuts him off. Westeros needs healing after this war. You understand the Game of Thrones better than most, and you have shown you can be trusted to do what is right when it matters. And if I refuse? Stannis's hand tightens on Lightbringer's hilt. Then you die here, and now. Tyrion considers his options for exactly 3 heartbeats. Then he drops to one knee before the Iron Throne. I accept your grace. I will serve as your hand, with all the skill and loyalty I can muster. Rise, Lord Hand, Stannis commands. You have work to do. Meanwhile, in the royal apartments, young Tommen Baratheon sits quietly while servants pack his belongings. The boy barely understands what has happened, only that his brother is dead and everything has changed. Davos Seaworth enters the chamber with a gentle expression on his weathered face. He approaches the child with the same care he once showed his own sons. "Hello, my prince," Davos says softly. "I am Sir Davos. I'm going to take you somewhere safe." Tommen looks up with wide, frightened eyes. "Are you going to kill me like they killed Joffrey?" "No, lad," Davos assures him. "King Stannis is sending you to Storm's End, where you'll be well cared for. You'll have tutors and training masters. You'll learn to be a good man." "Will I see my mother again?" Davos hesitates, then speaks with gentle honesty. "Perhaps someday, when you're grown. For now, you'll be safe at Storm's End. That's what matters." As the sun sets over King's Landing, ravens take flight from the Red Keep's rookery. Each bird carries the same message to every corner of Westeros. Stannis Baratheon has claimed the Iron Throne. The usurper's line has ended. A new age has begun. In the throne room, Stannis sits upon the Iron Throne as his new hand approaches with scrolls and plans. The work of ruling has begun, and there is much to do. "The Lords will test us," Tyrion warns as he unfurls a map of the Seven Kingdoms. "Tywin Lannister will not accept defeat easily. The North remains in rebellion under young Stark, and across the narrow sea, one enemy at a time, Lord Hand," Stannis says grimly. "We have justice on our side. That will have to be enough. Outside the Red Keep, the ashes of the great sept of Baelor settle over the city like snow. The old gods are dead. The new age of fire has begun. The ravens reach Tywin Lannister as he camps beside the God's Eye, his army spread across the fields like a golden carpet. The old lion sits in his command tent, studying maps, when Maester Balabar enters with trembling hands and a face white as bone. "My lord," the Maester whispers, his voice barely audible above the wind. "News from King's Landing." Tywin does not look up from his maps. He has been planning the relief of the capital, calculating how many days his march will take. Victory seems certain, with nearly 20,000 men at his back. "Speak," he commands, still focused on the parchment before him. "King's Landing has fallen, my lord. King Joffrey is dead. Stannis Baratheon sits the Iron Throne." The quill snaps in Tywin's grip. Ink spreads across the map like blood. For a moment that stretches into eternity, the most powerful man in Westeros says nothing. His green eyes slowly rise to meet the Maester's gaze. "How?" The single word carries the weight of a collapsing dynasty. Stannis's fleet survived the wildfire trap. They stormed the Red Keep. The boy king was executed for treason and murder. The Master's voice cracks. "Lady Cersei has been sentenced to take the black. Lord Tyrion serves as Stannis's hand." Tywin's face remains stone, but something dies behind his eyes. Everything he has built, everything he has sacrificed for, crumbles to ash in a single moment. "Leave me," he says quietly. The Maester bows and retreats. Tywin stares at the ruined map, seeing not the roads and rivers but the faces of his children. Jaime, captive in the north. Cersei, condemned to a life of servitude. Tyrion, serving the usurper who killed his own nephew. A roar of pure rage erupts from the tent as Tywin sweeps the table clean. Maps, papers, and goblets crash to the ground. The sound carries across the camp as the Lion of Lannister confronts the destruction of everything he holds dear. But Tywin Lannister did not build the greatest dynasty in Westeros by surrendering to despair. After long minutes, his breathing steadies. His mind sharpens like a blade being honed. If his grandson is dead and his legacy broken, then he will forge a new one from the ashes. He calls for his knights and gives the order that will reshape the war. We march for Casterly Rock. Send ravens to every lord in the Westerlands. The lion still has claws. Meanwhile, at River Run, Jaime Lannister paces his cell like a caged wolf. The Kingslayer's golden hair has grown long during his captivity, and his once fine clothes hang in tatters. But his green eyes still burn with the fire that made him the most feared knight in Westeros. Catelyn Stark enters the dungeon with her usual guard of northern soldiers. The Lady of Winterfell carries herself with quiet dignity, despite the grief that has aged her face. She stops before his cell and studies him with eyes that have seen too much sorrow. "Your nephew is dead," she says, without preamble. "Stannis Baratheon has taken King's Landing." Jaime's hand moves instinctively to where his sword once hung. "Joffrey? Executed for the murder of my husband. Your sister has been sentenced to religious service. Your brother serves as hand to the new king." The words hit Jaime like physical blows. He leans against the stone wall, processing the magnitude of what has happened. "Tyrion always lands on his feet," he says with bitter admiration. "But Cersei, what of Tommen and Myrcella? The boy has been sent away for his protection. The girl remains in King's Landing." Catelyn's voice softens slightly. "Your family is scattered to the winds, Sir Jaime, just as mine was." Jaime meets her gaze. "What do you want from me?" "My daughters, Sansa and Arya. I want them returned safely. Even if I could arrange it, what makes you think Stannis would honor any agreement I made?" Catelyn considers this. "Because he is a man of honor, unlike the monsters who held my children before." Far to the south, in the golden halls of Highgarden, Olenna Tyrell sits in her solar, surrounded by blooming roses. The Queen of Thorns reads the Raven from King's Landing with calculating eyes, while her granddaughter Margaery paces nearby. "Stannis Baratheon," Olenna muses, setting down the parchment. "Well, that's inconvenient." Margaery stops her pacing. "Grandmother, what do? We supported the wrong side." "We supported Renly because he seemed likely to win," Olenna corrects. "When he died, we threw in with the Lannisters for the same reason. Now Stannis holds the throne, and we must decide if he can keep it." "He's not married," Margaery points out, hopefully. Olenna chuckles. "My dear child, Stannis Baratheon is famously devoted to his plain wife. He would no sooner set her aside than he would abandon his rigid sense of justice. No, we cannot charm our way into his bed as we might have with Robert or Renly." "Then what?" The old woman's eyes gleam with cunning. "We wait. Tywin Lannister will not accept this defeat. There will be another war, and wars create opportunities for those clever enough to seize them." At Casterly Rock, Tywin calls his war council in the great hall beneath banners bearing the Golden Lion. Kevan Lannister stands at his brother's right hand, while a dozen lesser lords fill out the circle. The atmosphere crackles with tension and barely contained fury. "Gentlemen," Tywin begins, his voice carrying the authority of decades of command. "We face a choice. We can bend the knee to the usurper who murdered my grandson, or we can fight for what is rightfully ours." Lord Craighall shifts nervously. "My lord, King's Landing has fallen. Perhaps we should consider—" "I am considering," Tywin cuts him off coldly. "I am considering how to reclaim my family's honor and restore the rightful order to Westeros." He turns to a map of the 7 kingdoms mounted on the wall. Red pins mark Stannis' forces, while gold pins show Lannister strongholds. My granddaughter Myrcella is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne, he declares. She has the blood of kings, and a better claim than any bastard born of incest. The lords exchange glances. Everyone knows Joffrey and Tommen were born of the same incest that Tywin now denounces, but none dare speak this truth aloud. Kevan, Tywin continues, you will ride to Dorne. Prince Doran has always been cautious, but his brother Oberyn hungers for revenge against our house. Convince them that supporting Myrcella serves their interests better than allowing Stannis to consolidate power. Yes, my lord, Kevan replies with a bow. Lord Craighall, you will send ravens to the Reach. The Tyrells backed the wrong horse twice. Perhaps they can be persuaded to choose more wisely this time. And if they refuse? Tywin's smile is cold as winter. Then they will burn with the rest of Stannis' supporters when we retake King's Landing. Meanwhile, in the Red Keep's solar, Petter Baelish stands before a window, watching the reconstruction of the city below. Littlefinger's grey-green eyes miss nothing as Stannis' men work to repair the damage from the battle. The Master of Coin has survived another change of regime through careful manoeuvring and useful information. A soft knock at the door interrupts his thoughts. Sansa Stark enters quietly, her auburn hair catching the light from the window. The young woman has grown more careful in her movements, more aware of the dangers that surround her. Lord Baelish, she says with a curtsy. You sent for me? I did indeed, my dear. He turns from the window with that enigmatic smile that never quite reaches his eyes. I have news that may interest you. Your mother lives. She holds your uncle at River Run. Sansa's breath catches. Jaime Lannister. But I thought he was dead. No, merely captured. And now that the political situation has changed so dramatically, his value as a hostage has increased considerably. What does this mean for me? Littlefinger moves closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. It means, sweet child, that you may soon be free of this place. Your mother will want you back now that she has something to trade for you. King Stannis would allow this? Kings can be remarkably reasonable when the right incentives are applied. Your new hand understands the value of political stability. A gesture of goodwill toward the North could prevent further bloodshed. Sansa's eyes shine with the first real hope she has felt in months. When? Soon, Littlefinger promises. But you must be patient. These things require delicate negotiation. At the Twins, Walder Frey sits in his great hall, picking at a meal of bread and ale. The ancient lord's rheumy eyes study the raven from King's Landing with growing interest. His numerous sons and grandsons crowd around him like carrion birds, all waiting for the old man to speak. So, he croaks finally, the Lannisters are not so mighty after all. Father, says Sir Stevron Frey, his eldest son, what should our response be? We are sworn to young Stark. Walder coughs up phlegm and spits it onto the floor. Are we? The boy king is dead. Perhaps our oaths died with him. King Stannis sits the Iron Throne now, another son points out. Should we declare for him? The old lord's laugh sounds like grinding stone. Stannis? That man has all the charm of a funeral shroud. No, we wait and see who proves strongest. The Lannisters still have gold and armies. The North still has young Stark. And now this Stannis thinks he can rule us all. He leans back in his chair with a calculating expression. Send word to Lord Tywin. Tell him House Frey remembers its friends. But send word to no one else yet. The time for choosing sides has not yet come. Back at Casterly Rock, Tywin receives Frey's message with grim satisfaction. The pieces are falling into place. Dorne may be convinced to support Myrcella's claim. The Reach can be bought or threatened into compliance, and the North remains locked in its own rebellion. "My lord," Kevan reports after returning from his preparations for the journey to Dorne. "The ravens have gone out. What of Shaime?" Tywin's jaw tightens. "My son will have to wait. We cannot appear weak by negotiating for hostages while we prepare for war. And if Catelyn Stark decides to use him against us, then she will learn that I am not the sort of man who forgives the murder of his family." Tywin's voice carries the promise of terrible vengeance. "But first we must gather our strength. Send word to every banner sworn to House Lannister. The lion may be wounded, but he is far from dead." The war room fills with the sounds of preparation as lords and captains receive their orders. Maps are studied, supplies calculated, and alliances weighed. In the space of a single day, Tywin has begun the transformation from defeated lord to rebel kingmaker. Outside Casterly Rock's walls, the golden banners of House Lannister snap in the wind. The lion may have lost his den, but his roar still echoes across the Westerlands. And in the Game of Thrones, the only victory that matters is the last one. The pieces are set for the next phase of the war that will determine the fate of Westeros. The Raven arrives at Riverrun as dawn breaks over the red stones of the ancient castle. Robb Stark stands on the battlements, watching his army break camp in the fields below when Maester Vyman approaches with the black bird perched on his arm. "Your Grace," the Maester says quietly. "Urgent news from King's Landing." Robb takes the parchment with steady hands, though something in the Maester's tone makes his stomach clench. He breaks the seal and reads in silence, while the wind whips his auburn hair around his face. The words blur before his eyes. Stannis victorious, Joffrey dead. The usurper's line ended, his father's murder avenged at last. "Your Grace?" Master Vyman asks softly. "Are you well?" Robb folds the letter carefully, his mind racing through the implications. Everything has changed in a single battle. The boy king who ordered his father's execution is dead, but Stannis Baratheon now sits the Iron Throne, and the North remains in rebellion. "Summon my lords to the Great Hall," he commands, "all of them. We have much to discuss." The Great Hall of Riverrun fills with the banners of the North and Riverlands, the direwolf of Stark, the jumping trout of Tully, the twin towers of Frey. Lords who have followed the young Wolf King into battle now wait to hear how the game has changed. Catelyn Stark enters the hall with quiet grace, her auburn hair streaked with premature silver. The Lady of Winterfell takes her place beside her son's throne, studying the assembled lords with sharp eyes. Robb stands before them all, the crown of the king in the north upon his brow. But for the first time since his lords acclaimed him, he feels the weight of that crown like a millstone. "My lords," he begins, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "Stannis Baratheon has taken King's Landing. Joffrey Baratheon is dead." The hall erupts in cheers and shouts. Lords pound their fists on tables and cry out for justice served. But Robb raises his hand for silence, his face grim. "Justice has been done for my father's murder," he continues. "But we now face a new reality. Stannis claims the Iron Throne by right of blood and conquest. The question before us is simple. Do we bend the knee to him, or do we maintain our independence?" The great Jon Umber lurches to his feet, his massive frame swaying slightly from the wine. "Independence!" he roars. "We acclaimed you king in the north, and king in the north you'll remain." "Aye!" shouts Lord Karstark, his voice thick with grief for his sons. "We've bled too much to kneel now." But Mage Mormont stands with more measured words. "Your Grace, Stannis Baratheon is known as a just man. He avenged Lord Eddard's murder. Perhaps we should hear what terms he might offer. Terms? The great Jon spits. We don't need terms from southern kings. The North remembers and the North endures. Catelyn steps forward, her voice cutting through the arguments like a blade. My lords, please, we must think of more than just our pride. She turns to face her son, her blue eyes bright with maternal concern. Robb, Sansa is still in King's Landing. So is Arya, if she lives. Stannis holds our daughters. That must factor into any decision we make. The hall falls silent as her words sink in. Every lord present has heard the stories of what happened to noble hostages when wars went badly. Robb's jaw tightens. Mother speaks wisdom. But I will not trade the independence of the North for my sister's safety, no matter how much it pains me. Then send envoys, suggests Sir Brynden Tully from his place near the hearth. Test Stannis' intentions. Learn what he offers and what he demands. Information costs us nothing. Lord Roose Bolton speaks for the first time, his pale eyes reflecting the firelight. The Blackfish speaks sense. We should know our enemy before we choose our path. Stannis is not our enemy, Catelyn interjects sharply. He executed the monster who killed Ned. He may be willing to negotiate honorably. The debate continues for hours as ravens come and go from the rookery. Reports arrive from across the realm. Tywin Lannister gathering forces in the west, the Tyrells wavering in their loyalties, Dorne remaining neutral. But one piece of news strikes like a thunderbolt. Your Grace, announces a mud-splattered rider who has just arrived, Winterfell has fallen. Theon Greyjoy holds your castle. The hall explodes in outrage. Lords shout for vengeance, while others demand immediate action. But Robb stands frozen, the betrayal cutting deeper than any sword. Theon, he whispers. But he swore. He's my brother. Catelyn's face goes white as bone. Bran? Rickon? Missing, my lady. Lord Theon claims they tried to escape and were killed, but no bodies have been found. The news changes everything. With Winterfell lost and his brothers missing or dead, Robb's position becomes desperate. The North cannot remain independent if its heart has been torn out by iron-born raiders. How many ships? Robb demands, his voice hard as winter. 20 longships, Your Grace. Maybe more coming from the Iron Islands. Meanwhile, at the wall, Jon Snow practices his sword work in the training yard, while his breath mists in the cold air. Castle Black bustles with activity as rangers prepare for patrols beyond the wall. The bastard of Winterfell moves through the forms his father taught him, trying to lose himself in the familiar rhythm of steel. A horn sounds from the top of the wall. One blast, rangers returning. Jon sheathes his sword and joins the crowd gathering in the courtyard. Lord Commander Jeor Mormont emerges from his tower, his weathered face grim as he awaits the returning patrol. The gates open to admit 3 rangers on exhausted horses. Their leader, Sir Jeremy Riker, dismounts and approaches the old bear with urgent steps. My lord, he reports, we found the Half-Hands patrol, all dead, killed by wildlings, but he hesitates. Speak plainly, man. The bodies were arranged, my lord, in patterns, like some kind of message. Mormont's face darkens. What kind of patterns? Circles, my lord. The bodies formed circles in the snow. Jon feels ice in his veins that has nothing to do with the cold. Around him, the other brothers mutter nervously. Everyone at Castle Black knows the stories of what lies beyond the wall. Double the watches, Mormont orders, and send ravens to all the castles. Something is stirring in the true north. Far to the south, at Harrenhal, Arya Stark serves wine to Tywin Lannister as he studies his correspondence. The girl who was once a lord's daughter now goes by the name Nan. just another servant in the vast castle. Tywin reads each letter with careful attention, his green eyes missing nothing. Reports from his spies, messages from potential allies, intelligence on enemy movements. The old lion plans his next moves with methodical precision. "More wine," he commands without looking up. Arya approaches with the pitcher, her face carefully blank. She has learned to be invisible in plain sight, a skill that has kept her alive through months of captivity. "My lord," ventures Sir Amory Lorch from across the table, "what news from the capital?" Tywin sets down one letter and picks up another. Stannis consolidates his hold on King's Landing. He's appointed the dwarf as his hand. "Tyrion." Sir Amory sounds genuinely surprised. "But he's a Lannister." "Indeed, which suggests our new king is either very clever or very foolish." Tywin's voice reveals nothing of his thoughts. Arya listens carefully while pretending to focus on her serving duties. Every piece of information might prove useful someday when the time comes to escape this place. "What of our response, my lord?" "Patience, Sir Amory. Wars are won by those who choose their moment wisely." Tywin finally looks up from his letters. "Besides, we may have unexpected allies before long." Back at River Run, the War Council reaches its decision as evening falls. The Great Hall has emptied, except for Robb's inner circle. His mother, the Blackfish, Lord Bolton, and a handful of his most trusted lords. "We'll send envoys to King's Landing," Robb announces. "Lord Karstark will lead them, along with representatives from the major houses. They'll offer to discuss terms for peace." "And if Stannis demands our surrender," asks Catelyn, "then we'll have our answer about his character. A king who rules through fear is no better than the boy we fought to depose." "And the marriage alliance with the Freys?" inquires the Blackfish. Walder Frey grows impatient. Robb's face hardens. "After Theon's betrayal, we need every ally we can get. Send word to Lord Walder. The wedding will proceed as planned." "Which girl?" Catelyn asks gently. "It doesn't matter. A Frey is a Frey. What matters is securing the crossing and keeping their swords sharp." The decision weighs heavily on all of them. Marriage alliances in wartime are rarely about love, but the cold calculation still stings. "There's one more matter," Catelyn says quietly. "Jaime Lannister. If we're negotiating with Stannis, his brother might prove useful as a gesture of good faith." Robb considers this. "Or we might need him to trade for our own people if negotiations fail." "No. For now, the Kingslayer stays in his cell." As the council disperses, Robb remains in the great hall, staring at the flames in the massive hearth. The crown of the North suddenly feels heavier than ever. Every decision could mean life or death for thousands. Catelyn approaches her son with motherly concern. "Robb, you've made the right choice. Your father would be proud." "Would he?" "I'm about to treat with the enemies of his friend, Robert Baratheon. I'm sacrificing my marriage for political advantage. I'm holding a hostage who might be the key to bringing my sisters home." "You're being a king," Catelyn says firmly. "Kings must make hard choices. That's the burden you accepted when you took the crown." Outside River Run's walls, the campfires of the Northern Army flicker like stars. Soldiers sharpen weapons and mend armor, preparing for whatever comes next. Some sing songs of home, while others write letters they may never send. The raven that will carry Robb's message to King's Landing waits in the rookery. The words on the parchment are carefully chosen, offering negotiation without surrender, peace without submission. The Game of Thrones continues, but the rules have changed completely. In the north, winter is coming. In the south, the fires of a new reign burn bright, and somewhere between them, the fate of Westeros hangs in the balance. The spice merchants arrive in Korth with more than saffron and silk in their holds. They carry whispers from across the narrow sea, stories that spread through the bazaars like wildfire. Daenerys Targaryen sits in the garden of Xaro Shon Daxos, listening to these tales with growing intensity. "King's Landing has fallen, Your Grace," reports Captain Groleo, his weathered face grave as he relays what the merchants told him. Stannis Baratheon sits the Iron Throne. The boy king is dead. Daenerys feels her heart skip a beat. The dragons sense her excitement, Drogon lifting his black head from where he rests in the shade of a pomegranate tree. His red eyes reflect the afternoon sun as smoke curls from his nostrils. "Joffrey Baratheon is dead?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "Executed for treason and murder," they say. The dwarf Tyrion Lannister serves as hand to the new king. Jorah Mormont steps forward from his place by the fountain. The Bear Knight's face shows the same mixture of excitement and concern that Daenerys feels. "This changes everything, Khaleesi," he says quietly. "The usurper's line is broken. Stannis may have Robert's throne, but he has no more right to it than Robert did." Daenerys rises from her chair, her silver hair catching the light as she paces among the flowering vines. Her mind races through the implications. For months, she has been trapped in this golden cage, begging for ships while the Carthen play their games. Now opportunity beckons from across the water. "Tell me everything," she commands. Every detail the merchants shared. Captain Groleo nods and continues his report. The city fell after a great battle in the bay. Stannis' fleet broke through the harbour defences and stormed the Red Keep. There was fighting in the streets, but resistance collapsed quickly once the Lannister forces realised Tywin's relief had failed to arrive. And what of Tywin Lannister? Gathering his remaining forces in the west, Your Grace. They say he refuses to accept defeat. The realm may yet see more war before this is settled. Daenerys stops her pacing, her violet eyes bright with calculation. A realm at war with itself, divided enemies. This is the moment I have been waiting for. Jorah approaches carefully. "Khaleesi, we must be cautious. You have 3 dragons, yes, but they are still young, and we have no ships, no army to speak of." "Then we will acquire both," she declares with the certainty of someone who has walked through fire and emerged unburned. The changed situation in Westeros means new opportunities for alliances. That evening, Daenerys meets with Xaro Shon Daxos in his opulent receiving chamber. The merchant prince lounges on silk cushions, while slaves fan him with peacock feathers. His bejeweled fingers toy with a golden goblet as he studies his troublesome guest. "My dear queen," he purrs, "I hear you've received interesting news from the west." "I have, and it makes my need for ships more urgent than ever." Xaro's laugh is musical and mocking. "Ships, always ships. You sound like a broken harp, playing the same note endlessly." "The political situation has changed dramatically," Daenerys presses. "Stannis Baratheon holds King's Landing, but his grip on power is tenuous. Civil war rages across Westeros. This is the perfect time to press my claim. Or the perfect time to die in a war you cannot win." Xaro sets down his goblet and leans forward. "Tell me, little queen, what makes you think the lords of Westeros will welcome a Targaryen back? Your father was quite mad, as I recall." Daenerys' eyes flash with anger. "My father's crimes are not mine to bear. I am the rightful queen of the 7 kingdoms." "According to whom?" "Stannis Baratheon sits your throne and seems disinclined to vacate it." "He is a usurper, just as Robert was before him." Xaro waves a dismissive hand. "Usurper, rightful king, such distinctions matter little to merchants. What matters is stability, trade, profit. Can you offer those things? I can offer dragons, Daenerys says quietly. The merchant prince falls silent. Even he cannot dismiss the power that sleeps in her chambers. Meanwhile, in the House of the Undying, the warlocks of Korth perform their ancient rituals. The blue-lipped sorcerers move through chambers filled with shade of the evening, their magic stirring in response to the dragon's presence in their city. The dragons grow stronger, whispers Pyat Pri to his fellow warlocks. Soon they will be beyond our ability to bind. Then we must act quickly, responds another warlock, his voice like rustling leaves. Bring the girl to us. Let her see what her future holds. The invitation comes the next morning, delivered by a child with blue lips and empty eyes. Daenerys reads the elegant script with Jorah looking over her shoulder. Don't go, Khaleesi, he warns. The warlocks cannot be trusted. This could be a trap. Everything in Korth is a trap, she replies. But I need to know what they've seen. The House of the Undying shows truth, twisted though it may be. What if they try to keep you there? What if... Then you and the dragons will come for me. But I must know what my future holds, especially now that everything has changed. That afternoon, Daenerys walks through the twisting corridors of the House of the Undying. The palace seems to shift around her, doors appearing and disappearing like mirages. But her feet carry her forward with purpose, guided by instincts older than memory. She enters the chamber of visions and sees the Iron Throne covered in snow. But as she watches, the snow melts away to reveal not Stannis Baratheon, but another figure seated upon the twisted metal, a man with golden hair and green eyes, who raises a golden hand in greeting. Sister, the vision speaks with Jaime Lannister's voice, though she knows this cannot be real. The scene shifts. She sees King's Landing burning, but not from dragonfire. Wildfire erupts from the sept and spreads through the city like a plague. People scream and flee as green flames consume everything they have built. Another shift. 3 dragons soar over a great fleet sailing toward a sunrise. But one of the dragons falls into the sea, pierced by some unseen weapon. The other 2 roar their grief to the sky. What does it mean? She whispers to the empty air. The visions do not answer directly. Instead, they show her a map of Westeros, marked with different-colored flames. Red flames burn in the north, where R'hllor's influence spreads. Golden flames flicker in the west, where Lannister gold still commands loyalty. And in the south, violet flames await her coming. Dawn, she breathes, understanding at last. The vision shows her a sun-speared banner and a prince with kind eyes. Words echo through the chamber without a speaker. Fire and blood, but also sun and spear. When she emerges from the House of the Undying hours later, Jorah waits with barely contained anxiety. Her dragons sense her return and screech their welcome from the courtyard where they have been pacing. Khaleesi, what did you see? The future, she says simply. Or one possible future. And I know now where we must go first when we leave this place. Where? Slaver's Bay. I need an army, and there are 3 cities there that can provide one. But more importantly, I saw potential allies in Westeros. Dorne has reason to hate the Lannisters and the Baratheons equally. Dorne? Jorah's eyebrows rise. They've stayed out of every war since Robert's rebellion, because they had no reason to fight. But if I offer them vengeance for Elia Martell and her children, if I show them dragons burning the enemies who wronged their family... She lets the implication hang in the air. It's a dangerous game, Khaleesi. The Dornish are proud and unpredictable. So am I, she replies with a slight smile. Blood of the dragon, remember? That evening she summons Captain Groleo and the few other ship captains who have remained loyal to her cause. I want you to send messages, she tells them, quietly through merchants and traders who travel to Dawn. Let it be known that Daenerys Targaryen remembers her cousins. Let it be known that dragons have returned to the world, and they burn hottest against those who harm the innocent. What message should they carry, Your Grace? Tell Prince Doran that the blood debt for his sister hasn't been forgotten. Tell him that when I come to reclaim my birthright, Dawn will have its justice. The captains bow and depart to make preparations. Daenerys remains in the garden as night falls, her dragons curled around her like living jewelry. Drogon's eyes glow like coals in the darkness. Soon, she whispers to them, soon we will leave this place. We will gather an army and sail for home. The Game of Thrones has changed, and it's time to play our hand. In the distance, the lights of Korth twinkle like stars, but Daenerys' thoughts are across the narrow sea. Stannis may sit her family's throne, but thrones can change hands. She has learned that lesson well. The last dragon begins to plan her return to Westeros, and this time she will not come as a beggar seeking aid. She will come as a conqueror, with fire and blood, and the justice that has been too long denied. The merchant's tales have lit a fire in her heart that burns brighter than any her dragons can produce. War rages in Westeros, and war creates opportunities for those bold enough to seize them. In her chambers that night, she writes letters by candlelight, letters to be carried by merchants and smugglers, whispered in taverns and trading posts, letters that begin the long work of building alliances across the narrow sea. The Dragon Queen prepares to spread her wings. The twins loom against the grey autumn sky, like twin daggers thrust into the heart of the Riverlands. Robb Stark rides toward the crossing with his royal escort, the direwolf banners snapping in the wind behind him. But today, he comes not as a conquering king, but as a bridegroom honoring an old promise. Catelyn rides beside her son, her blue eyes studying the ancient towers with growing unease. Too much has changed since they first crossed this bridge as supplicants. Now they return in strength, but strength can be a dangerous thing when dealing with a lord as proud and bitter as Walder Frey. The old man will want his due, she warns quietly, as their horses' hooves echo on the stone bridge. 15 years he's waited for this marriage alliance. He'll extract every ounce of ceremony and respect he can. Robb nods grimly, his crown sitting heavy on his brow. Then he'll have it. We need his men more than ever, especially with Theon holding Winterfell and Stannis consolidating power in the south. Behind them rides a host of northern lords and their retainers. The Greatjon's massive form towers above the rest, while Sir Brynden. Tully keeps careful watch on their flanks. Every man wears mail beneath his finery, for weddings can turn deadly when kings are involved. The gates of the twins open with a grinding of iron on stone. Lord Walder Frey waits in the courtyard, supported by 2 of his many sons. The ancient lord's roomy eyes gleam with satisfaction as he watches the king in the north dismount. Your Grace, Walder croaks, his voice like grinding millstones. Welcome back to the twins. Come to make an honest woman of one of my girls at last, have you? Lord Frey, Robb replies with careful courtesy. I come to honor the agreement we made. House Stark pays its debts. Aye, so you say, though I hear debts mean different things to different kings these days. Walder's laugh sounds like a death rattle. Still, you're here, and that's more than I expected, after all the talk of independence and crowns. The feast hall of the twins fills with the sounds of celebration as evening falls. Musicians play in the gallery, while servants bring course after course of rich food. Robb sits at the high table beside his bride, Roslyn Frey, a pleasant girl with kind eyes who seems as nervous as he about their political marriage. Catelyn watches the proceedings with the careful attention of a woman who has survived too many dangerous feasts. Something feels wrong about the atmosphere, though she cannot put her finger on what. The musicians seem wrong somehow, their faces too hard for measure entertainers. "Mother," Robb murmurs during a lull in the music, "do those men look like musicians to you?" "No," she replies quietly, her hand moving instinctively toward the dagger at her belt. "They look like soldiers." Meanwhile, in the chambers beneath the twins, a raven arrives for Lord Walder with urgent news. Sir Stevron Frey reads the message to his ancient father, while other family members crowd around in the flickering candlelight. "Tywin Lannister," Stevron reports, his voice tight with tension. "He offers gold and lands for our cooperation in tonight's festivities." Walder's fingers drum against the arm of his chair as he considers the proposal. Does he indeed? And what of our new king? Stannis the Righteous sits in King's Landing now. "Stannis has made no overtures to us, father, no promises of reward for our loyalty." "But he executed the boy who murdered Ned Stark," points out another son. "That counts for something," Walder spits into the rushes. "Sentiment, worthless as tears. What matters is power, and power shifts like sand in an hourglass." The old lord closes his eyes for a long moment, weighing his options. Stannis holds the capital, but faces rebellion from the west. The north remains defiant under young Stark. And somewhere across the narrow sea, a dragon queen gathers her strength. "Send word to our musicians," he decides finally. "But tell them to wait for my signal. If this goes badly, I want options." In the feast hall above, the celebration reaches its crescendo as the bedding ceremony approaches. But Catelyn notices that several Frey men have positioned themselves near the exits, and the servants seem more nervous than wedding preparations would warrant. "Robb," she whispers urgently, "we need to leave. Now." "Mother, I can't abandon my wedding. This isn't your wedding anymore. This is a trap." Before Robb can respond, the musicians in the gallery suddenly draw weapons from their instrument cases. Steel glints in the torchlight as crossbows appear where lyres once were. The lead musician, a hard-faced man with Lannister colours barely concealed beneath his minstrel's garb, raises his crossbow toward the high table. "The Lannisters send their regards," he shouts. Chaos erupts as the musicians begin their deadly song. Quarrels fly through the air while Frey soldiers move to block the exits. But the northern lords are warriors born, and they respond with the speed of men who have fought in a dozen battles. The Great Yon roars like his namesake and overturns the heavy feast table, creating cover for his king. Steel sings as swords clear scabbards. Sir Brynden draws 2 blades and cuts down a Frey soldier before the man can fully draw his weapon. Robb staggers as a crossbow bolt takes him in the shoulder, but Catelyn drags him behind the overturned table as chaos rages around them. His bride screams in terror, genuine fear on her face, suggesting she knew nothing of the plot. "Mother!" Robb gasps, his hand pressed to the bleeding wound. "The window! We need to reach!" The great doors of the feast hall burst open as the trap springs fully. But instead of more Frey soldiers, a tide of northern men pours into the room. The Great Jon's son leads them, his sword already bloody from fighting in the courtyard. "Your Grace!" he shouts over the din of battle. "The camp! We saw the signals!" The northern army, camped outside the twins, had been watching for exactly this sort of betrayal. Smoke signals from loyal men inside the castle had warned them that treachery was afoot. The battle turns vicious as northern steel meets Frey treachery. Tables splinter under the weight of fighting men, while tapestries catch fire from overturned torches. The musicians die hard, but die they do, cut down by warriors who have seen real war. Lord Walder himself cowers behind his chair as the fighting rages around him. His ancient eyes dart between the combatants, calculating which way the battle will turn. "Yield!" roars the Great John, his massive sword at the old lord's throat. "Call off your men or die where you sit." "I yield! I yield!" Walder shrieks, his voice cracking with terror. "Stop the fighting! In the name of the gods, stop the fighting!" Meanwhile, outside the castle walls, another drama unfolds in the darkness. Arya Stark crouches in the woods with Sandor Clegane, watching the battle rage within the twins. The Hound had been taking her north when they heard of the royal wedding, and curiosity had drawn them close enough to witness the attempted massacre. "Your brother's still breathing," Sandor observes grimly, as they watch northern banners still flying from the walls. "Barely." Arya's grey eyes burn with fury as she watches Frey soldiers flee into the night. "They tried to kill him. They tried to kill Robb." "Aye, but they failed. That's what matters. Take me to him," she demands. "Take me to my brother." Sandor studies her for a long moment. "You sure about that, girl?" Kings have a way of making everything complicated. "He's my brother, and I've been alone long enough." The Hound nods slowly. "Then we go. But if this turns ugly, you do exactly what I tell you. Understood?" Inside the feast hall, the fighting finally dies down as the last of the Frey resistance crumbles. Northern soldiers secure the hall while their wounded king receives treatment from Maester Wyman, who had wisely taken cover when the violence began. "How bad?" Catelyn asks, as the Maester examines Robb's shoulder. "The bolt missed the bone, my lady. Painful, but not mortal. He'll need rest and time to heal, but he'll recover." Robb grits his teeth as the Maester works. "What of our losses?" "Sir Donal Waynwood is dead, your grace. Sir Wendell Manderley took a sword thrust, but will live. A dozen others wounded, but none mortally." "And the Freys?" The Great Yon spits blood from a split lip. 24 dead, including those Lannister musicians. Lord Walder lives, though I'm half-minded to remedy that. "No," Robb says firmly. "We'll need him alive. This changes everything." Catelyn helps her son to a chair away from the blood and debris. "How so?" "Don't you see? Tywin orchestrated this, just as he did with his other plots. But we survived it. That makes us dangerous to him in a way we weren't before. It also makes us enemies of House Frey. House Frey made themselves our enemies when they drew steel against their guests," Robb replies grimly. "Guest right is sacred. They've violated every law of gods and men." The great doors open again as guards escort 2 unexpected visitors into the hall. Sandor Clegane enters with his hand on his sword, his burned face grim in the torchlight. Beside him walks a slight figure in a hooded cloak. "Who goes there?" demands Sir Brynden, his sword still drawn. The figure pushes back her hood, revealing the face that has haunted Catelyn's dreams for months. Arya Stark stands in the doorway, older and harder than when she disappeared, but unmistakably alive. "Hello, Mother," she says quietly. "Hello, Robb." The reunion is tearful but brief, for there is much work to be done. Ravens must be sent to loyal lords. Defences must be organized. The political implications of the failed Red Wedding must be calculated and acted upon. "This was Tywin's move," Robb explains to his war council as they gather in the twins' solar. "He tried to eliminate me and break the North's resistance with a single stroke. But he failed," points out Mage Mormont. What will his response be? Desperation. He's lost King's Landing, lost his grandson, and now his plot has been exposed. He'll do whatever he can to salvage his position. Catelyn studies the map spread before them. We need to move quickly. Word of this will reach Stannis within days. How we handle it will determine whether we have war on two fronts or potential allies. Stannis will want justice, Arya says from her corner, and justice means punishing the Freys. Robb looks at his sister with new respect. The girl who left Winterfell has been replaced by someone harder, more dangerous. What do you suggest? Give them to him. Lord Walder and his treacherous sons. Let Stannis burn them for violating guest right. It shows you respect justice and puts distance between you and this betrayal. The room falls silent as they consider her words. Finally, Robb nods slowly. Send a raven to King's Landing, he orders. Tell Stannis what happened here. Offer to deliver the perpetrators for royal justice. And request a meeting to discuss the future of the realm. Outside the Twins, the Northern Army secures the crossing as dawn approaches. The failed Red Wedding has changed the game once again, but this time the pieces fall differently. Robb lives, Arya has returned, and Tywin's desperation grows more obvious with each failed gambit. The war is far from over, but the balance of power shifts once more in the Game of Thrones. The small council chamber of the Red Keep has seen many hands rule from its carved chairs, but none quite like Tyrion Lannister. The dwarf sits at the king's right hand as ravens arrive with reports from across the Seven Kingdoms, each message adding another piece to the puzzle of war and politics. Your Grace, he begins, unrolling a parchment stamped with northern seals. We have word from the Riverlands. The Red Wedding failed. Stannis Baratheon's jaw tightens as he leans forward in his chair. The iron crown sits heavily upon his brow, its iron points catching the morning light that streams through the tall windows. Failed how? Young Stark lives, though wounded. The Northern Army survived the trap. Lord Walder Frey's treachery was exposed, and his men paid the price. Tyrion sets down the message and picks up another. More importantly, Robb Stark requests an audience with your Grace to discuss the future of the realm. The chamber falls silent, except for the crackling of logs in the great hearth. Around the table sit the men who now advise the king. Davos Seaworth, as master of ships, Varys as master of whisperers, and Melisandre, who holds no formal title but whose influence grows daily. The young wolf seeks to bend the knee, asks Davos, his scarred fingers drumming against the table. Perhaps, Tyrion replies carefully. Or perhaps he seeks to test our strength before committing to a course of action. Either way, it represents an opportunity. Melisandre's red eyes gleam in the firelight. R'hllor's flames show me the truth of men's hearts. The northern boy king burns with honor, but also with pride. Pride can lead men to make foolish choices. As can zealotry, Tyrion observes dryly, earning a sharp look from the Red Priestess. Stannis raises a hand for silence. What counsel does my hand offer? Tyrion spreads a map of Westeros across the table, marking positions with colored pins. Red for royal forces, gold for Lannister loyalists, blue for northern armies. We face threats from multiple directions, he begins, his voice taking on the measured tone of a military briefing. Tywin masses forces in the west, likely preparing to crown Myrcella and press her claim. The north remains defiant under young Stark, and across the narrow sea, reports suggest Daenerys Targaryen grows stronger by the day. 3 armies against 1 throne, Davos murmurs. Not pleasant odds, which is why we must be clever rather than simply strong, Tyrion continues. The North has legitimate grievances against the crown. Eddard Stark died for loyalty to your Grace's claim. His son has proven himself an able commander and honorable ruler. An alliance serves both our interests. Melisandre leans forward, her voice like silk over steel. You would treat with rebels, my lord hand? I would turn enemies into allies. Tyrion corrects. The North's strength combined with ours gives us the numbers to crush my father's rebellion, and Robb Stark's reputation for honor makes him a more palatable ally than some we might consider. Varys speaks for the first time, his voice soft as a whisper. The realm bleeds from too much war, your grace. Peace, even purchased with compromise, serves the people better than continued bloodshed. Stannis studies the map with calculating eyes. And what of Dorne? They have remained neutral thus far. Ah, Tyrion says with a slight smile. That brings me to another matter. Prince Doran has sent his brother to King's Landing. Oberyn Martell arrives within the week. The revelation causes a stir around the table. The Red Viper of Dawn is famous throughout the Seven Kingdoms for his skill with both sword and poison. Why does he come? Stannis demands. Officially, to congratulate your grace on your victory and discuss trade agreements. Unofficially, Tyrion shrugs. Prince Oberyn has never forgiven the crown for his sister's murder. He may seek assurance that justice will be done. Elia Martell died during Robert's rebellion, Davos points out. Ancient history. Not to her brother, Tyrion replies. The Mountain still lives. So does Tywin Lannister, who gave the order. Dorne's support could be bought with the promise of vengeance. Melisandre's eyes burn brighter. Justice flows from the Lord of Light's will. The guilty will burn in his fires. Precisely, Tyrion agrees, though his tone suggests he means something entirely different. We offer Dorne what they've always wanted, justice for Elia and her children. In return, they march with us against my father's rebellion. Meanwhile, in the castle's rookery, Varys oversees the sending of dozens of ravens. The Master of Whisperers has served many kings, but none have proven as interesting as Stannis Baratheon. The man's rigid sense of justice creates opportunities for those skilled in the subtle arts. A young servant enters the rookery with careful steps. Lord Varys, the prisoners are ready for questioning. Varys nods and follows the servant down into the Red Keep's dungeons. In the dank cells below, several of Lord Walder's sons await interrogation. Their capture during the failed Red Wedding has provided valuable intelligence about Lannister movements. Sir Ryman, Varys greets one prisoner with false warmth. I trust your accommodations are adequate? The Frey Knight glares from behind iron bars. Stannis will pay for this. When Lord Tywin comes, he'll burn this city to the ground. Lord Tywin? Varys's voice carries genuine curiosity. How fascinating. Tell me, what exactly did he promise House Frey in exchange for this unfortunate business? The interrogation yields crucial intelligence. Tywin has indeed been gathering support for Mycella's claim. More importantly, he has sent agents to Dorne seeking alliance through the girl's Martell heritage. Back in the small council chamber, Tyrion receives this news with grim satisfaction. So my father plays the same game we do, but from a position of weakness. Interesting. How so? Stannis asks. He courts Dorne through Mycella's claim, but Dorne has no love for Lannisters. They remember who ordered their princess's murder. When Oberyn arrives, we'll have the chance to counter his every offer. A commotion outside the chamber draws their attention as guards escort a new arrival. Sir Barristan Selmy enters the room with measured dignity, his white cloak replaced by simple travelling clothes. Your Grace, the old knight says, bending his knee before Stannis. I offer my sword in service to the rightful king. Tyrion raises an eyebrow. The legendary knight's appearance is unexpected, but welcome news. Sir Barristan, Stannis acknowledges. I thought you sailed east with the Targaryen girl. I did, Your Grace, but I have seen enough of exile and dragon queens. Westeros is my home, and you are Robert's rightful heir. If you'll have me, I would serve as I served your brother. Rise, Sir Barristan. We have need of good men." As the knight takes his place among the advisers, Tyrion's mind races through the implications. Sir Barristan's return suggests problems for Daenerys Targaryen's cause, but it also adds legitimacy to Stannis' reign. "The Targaryen girl," Tyrion ventures carefully. "What news of her situation?" "She has acquired dragons, my lord. But little else. Korth proved less welcoming than she hoped. Last I heard, she sailed for Slaver's Bay, seeking to purchase an army." "Dragons," Melisandre breathes, her eyes wide with religious fervor. The prophecies speak of fire made flesh. She may be the prince that was promised. "Or she may be a pretender with dangerous pets," Tyrion counters. "Either way, she remains across the narrow sea while we deal with more immediate threats." The council session continues deep into the afternoon as they plan responses to each developing crisis. Ravens must be sent to potential allies. Defenses must be strengthened. The delicate work of statecraft continues even as armies gather for war. "There is one more matter," Tyrion says as the meeting nears its end. "My brother Jaime remains Robb Stark's prisoner. If we're to negotiate with the North, his situation becomes complex." Stannis' expression hardens. "The Kingslayer broke his oath and murdered my predecessor. Justice demands many things, Your Grace," Tyrion interrupts carefully. "But pragmatism sometimes serves the realm better than absolute justice. Jaime could be a valuable bargaining chip." "Or a liability," Davos points out. "The man who killed one king might kill another." "Indeed, which is why I propose a different solution." Tyrion spreads another map, this one showing the eastern kingdoms beyond Westeros. "We offer the North a trade, Jaime's freedom in exchange for military alliance, but instead of returning him to the Westerlands, we send him into exile. The Free Cities, perhaps, or Yiti. Remove him from the game entirely." The proposal generates heated debate. Melisandre argues for execution as demanded by divine justice. Davos worries about the precedent of showing mercy to oathbreakers, but Varys supports the Hand's pragmatic approach. "Exile serves multiple purposes," the spymaster observes. "It satisfies honor while removing a potential threat. More importantly, it demonstrates that Your Grace's justice can be tempered with wisdom." Stannis considers the arguments with his characteristic thoroughness. "Send word to the North," he decides finally. "We will meet with young Stark to discuss terms. If he proves reasonable, we'll consider this creative solution regarding his prisoner." As the council disperses, Tyrion remains behind to study the maps and dispatches scattered across the table. The Game of Thrones has become impossibly complex, with allegiances shifting like sand dunes in the wind. A soft knock interrupts his thoughts. A serving girl enters with wine and a message bearing his family's golden seal. "A raven from Casterly Rock, my lord." Tyrion breaks the wax carefully and reads his father's words with growing amusement. Tywin offers pardons, rewards, and reconciliation if his son will abandon Stannis and return to the family fold. "Still trying to buy loyalty with gold," he murmurs to himself, then feeds the letter to the flames in the hearth. Outside his window, the lights of King's Landing twinkle like stars. The city has accepted Stannis' rule with surprising ease, perhaps weary of war and chaos. But Tyrion knows that peace is fragile, and the greatest battles may yet lie ahead. He pours himself wine and returns to his work. There are strategies to plan, alliances to forge, and a realm to save from its own ambitions. The dwarf who was never meant to inherit anything now holds the future of Westeros in his clever hands. In the distance, the great sept of Baelor stands as a charred ruin, its 7 towers collapsed into rubble. The old gods are dead, burned in Rulla's fires. But whether the new god will bring salvation or destruction remains to be seen. The hand of the king works through the night, weaving the threads of diplomacy and war into patterns that might yet save them all. The god's eye stretches like a silver mirror beneath the autumn sun as 3 great armies converge on its shores. From the west comes the Golden Lion of Lannister, 20,000 strong under Tywin's iron command. From the north march the direwolf banners of Stark, fewer in number, but hardened by months of war. And from King's Landing rides Stannis Baratheon with the crowned stag and all the power of the Iron Throne. The greatest battle since the Trident is about to begin. Tyrion Lannister sits his horse on a hill overlooking the vast encampments, studying the deployment of forces with the eye of a commander who has learned war through necessity rather than training. As Hand of the King, he wears Stannis' colours, but his heart pounds with the knowledge that his father waits in the enemy camp. 3 armies, observes Ser Davos from beside him. 3 kings, only 1 throne to claim when the sun sets. 2 kings, Tyrion corrects quietly. Robb Stark negotiated his independence. He fights for the North's freedom, not the Iron Throne. The alliance had been hard won, weeks of careful diplomacy, sealed with the release of Jaime Lannister into exile rather than execution. The Kingslayer now sails for Essos, his golden hand clutching a ship's rail as he watches Westeros shrink behind him. A fair price for northern steel. Stannis rides the length of his battle line, Lightbringer blazing at his side as he inspects his troops. The king's face shows no emotion, but Tyrion knows the weight that rests on those rigid shoulders. Everything depends on the next few hours. Meanwhile, in the Lannister camp, Tywin Lannister dons his armor with the methodical precision of a man who has fought in dozens of battles. The old lion's green eyes burn with cold fury as he prepares to face his treacherous son across a field of war. "My lord," reports Sir Adam Marbrand, "the Northerners have taken position on our left flank. Young Stark deploys behind earthworks with his archers forward. And Stannis? Center position, as expected. He means to meet us head-on with his infantry. But there's something else, my lord. Ships approach from the south. The Red Wine fleet." Tywin's jaw tightens as he considers the implications. The Tyrell's loyalty remains uncertain. Their fleet could tip the balance in either direction. "Send riders to Lord Paxter," he commands. "Remind him where his true interests lie." Far to the north of the main battle line, Robb Stark adjusts his crown and surveys the field where his fate will be decided. The young king in the north has grown harder since the failed Red Wedding, his boyish features marked by the weight of command. "Grey Wind paces like he smells blood," observes the Great Jon, his massive war hammer resting against his shoulder. "He probably does," Robb replies grimly. "We all do." The Northern Army bears scars from months of fighting, but their spirit remains unbroken. They have come south, not as conquerors, but as free men fighting for the right to remain free. The battle begins with a thunder of hooves as cavalry charges echo across the field. Lannister knights in gleaming armor crash into Stannis' infantry, while northern horsemen sweep around the flanks like wolves hunting in a pack. Steel rings against steel as the morning air fills with the screams of men and horses. Banners fall and rise again as the tide of battle shifts with each charge and countercharge. Tyrion finds himself in the thick of fighting as his guards battle to keep him alive. His mind works frantically, calculating angles and opportunities, while his bodyguards cut down anyone who comes too close. "The center," he shouts to a messenger. "Tell his grace to reinforce the center. Father's pushing hard against our infantry." The young man races away through the chaos as Tyrion turns his attention to the naval battle unfolding in Blackwater Bay. Red wine ships clash with the remnants of Stannis' fleet in a dance of fire and steel upon the water. But the ships bear no Tyrell roses on their sails. Instead, they fly the sun and spear of House Martell. Dawn has entered the war at last. The sight of Dornish banners causes a ripple of shock through both armies. Prince Oberyn had negotiated well in King's Landing, buying his alliance with promises of justice for his murdered sister. "Dawn!" roars a Lannister knight before a northern sword takes his head. The Dornish landing catches Tywin's forces between hammer and anvil. Oberyn Martell leads his spearmen up the beach with the fury of a man who has waited 20 years for vengeance. Meanwhile, Stannis presses his advantage in the center, his sword blazing like a piece of the sun as he cuts through enemy ranks. The king fights with grim purpose, each stroke of his blade bringing him closer to the victory that will secure his crown forever. "For the one true king!" his men cry as they surge forward. But Tywin Lannister is no green boy to be swept aside by enthusiasm. The old lion rallies his forces with tactical brilliance, using the terrain to blunt the enemy advance, while his archers rake the northern flank. "You want a crown, Stannis?" Tywin roars across the battlefield. "Come and take it from my corpse!" The personal challenge echoes across the field as the two great commanders drive toward each other through the press of fighting men. Everything depends on this moment, this clash between the lord who ruled from shadows and the king who claims divine right. Tyrion sees the danger and spurs his horse forward, his guards struggling to keep pace. If Stannis falls to Tywin's blade, the alliance crumbles and all their work turns to ash. He arrives just as his father and his king meet in single combat. Lightbringer rings against Tywin's ancestral sword as the fate of Westeros hangs on two blades dancing in the afternoon sun. Around them, the battle rages with increasing desperation. Northern berserkers charge into Lannister pike squares, while Dornish spears find gaps in western armor. The field runs red with the blood of 3 kingdoms, but it is Robb Stark who breaks the deadlock. The young Wolf King leads a cavalry charge that smashes into Tywin's exposed flank, his sword cutting down enemy knights with the skill his father taught him. "The North remembers!" he cries, as grey wind tears into the Lannister lines. The impact of the northern charge breaks Tywin's formation at the crucial moment. Stannis presses his advantage, driving the old lion back step by step until Lightbringer finds the gap in Lannister armor. Tywin Lannister falls with his eyes fixed on the son who chose loyalty to a just king over blood, loyalty to an unjust father. His last words are lost in the din of battle, but Tyrion sees his lips form a single word: betrayer. The death of the great lord sends shockwaves through his army. Some units break and flee, while others fight on with desperate courage. But the outcome is no longer in doubt. As the sun begins to set over the God's Eye, the field belongs to Stannis Baratheon and his unlikely allies. The golden lions of Lannister lie trampled in the mud, while the crowned stag flies triumphant over the greatest victory of the war. Tyrion dismounts near his father's body, removing his helmet as he looks down at the man who shaped his life through cruelty and calculation. There is no satisfaction in this victory, only the bitter knowledge that some betrayals are necessary. "My Lord Hand," Stannis approaches with blood on his armor and exhaustion in his voice. "Your counsel proved sound. The alliance with the North won us this day." "At a price, Your Grace," Tyrion replies quietly. Everything has a price. Robb Stark rides across the field to join them, his young face aged by the day's fighting. The crown of the North sits askew on his bloodied brow, but his eyes burn with the satisfaction of justice served. "It's finished," he says simply. "Tywin Lannister is dead. His rebellion dies with him." "The Westerlands will need a new lord," Stannis observes. "Who speaks for House Lannister now?" All eyes turn to Tyrion, who still stares at his father's corpse. The dwarf who was never meant to inherit anything now finds himself lord of the richest region in Westeros. "I do," he says finally. "And as Lord of Casterly Rock, I submit to your grace's justice. The rebellion is ended. Let there be peace." The formal submission sends a murmur through the assembled knights and lords. The war that began with Ned Stark's execution ends with his king's vengeance complete. But even as they speak of peace, ravens take flight from the battlefield, carrying news that will reshape the game once again. Word of this great victory will reach every corner of Westeros and beyond to the ears of a dragon queen who watches and waits across the narrow sea. Meanwhile, in the waters of Blackwater Bay, the Dornish fleet completes its destruction of the remaining Lannister ships. Oberyn Martell stands on his flagship's deck, with Elya's memory finally avenged. 20 years, he whispers to the wind. 20 years I waited for this day. The Red Viper has tasted his vengeance at last, but the Game of Thrones never truly ends. Other players move in shadow and flame, preparing their own bids for power. As night falls over the battlefield, the survivors tend their wounds and count their dead. 3 armies came to the God's Eye seeking victory. Only one remains standing, but the cost has been terrible for all. Stannis Baratheon sits the Iron Throne more securely than before, but the realm he rules bears deep scars. The North has its independence, but lost thousands of its sons. And across the narrow sea, dragons grow larger with each passing day. The immediate war is over, but the Game of Thrones continues. It always continues. In the distance, wolves howl across the battlefield where so many have died. Some say it is only Grey Wind calling to his fallen packmates. Others whisper that the old gods themselves cry out for the blood that has watered the earth this day. Either way, the sound echoes long into the night as the survivors prepare for whatever comes next in the endless dance of power and ambition that defines Westeros. The field of the God's Eye will be remembered as the place where 3 kings met and one emerged victorious. But victory, as Tyrion learned long ago, always comes with a price, and some prices are higher than others. The dragons arrive like a storm from the east, their shadows falling across dawn as the ancient prophecies finally come to pass. 3 winged shapes circle above the sun spear, as Daenerys Targaryen returns to the land of her birth with fire and blood in her wake. Prince Doran Martell watches from his wheelchair on the tower balcony as the largest dragon lands in his courtyard with earth-shaking force. Drogon's black scales gleam like obsidian, while smoke curls from his nostrils. The other 2 dragons, Viserion and Rhaegal, perch on the palace walls like living gargoyles. "Your Grace," Daenerys says as she dismounts from Drogon's back, her silver hair flowing like molten metal in the afternoon sun. "I am Daenerys of House Targaryen, rightful queen of the 7 kingdoms. I come seeking the alliance our houses once shared." The Dragon Queen wears the simple leather and cloth of a conqueror rather than royal finery. Behind her march 2,000 unsullied, their bronze caps gleaming in formation. It is a smaller force than she might wish, but the dragons make up for any lack of numbers. Doran studies her with calculating eyes. The Prince of Dawn has spent a lifetime playing the long game, but dragons change every calculation. Your Grace, he replies carefully, Dawn welcomes the blood of old Valyria, but you arrive at a complex time. So I understand. My spies report that my throne is occupied by a usurper, that civil war rages across Westeros. But they also report that Dawn fights alongside this Stannis Baratheon. Tell me, Prince Doran, does House Martell now serve the enemies of House Targaryen? The question hangs in the air like wildfire smoke. From the courtyard below comes the nervous whinnying of horses, terrified by the dragon's presence. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles to the north, ravens carry the impossible news to King's Landing. In the Red Keep's small council chamber, Tyrion Lannister reads the reports with growing amazement, while Stannis sits rigid as stone in his chair. Dragons, Stannis says quietly. After nearly 3 centuries, dragons have returned to Westeros. 3 of them, according to the reports from Dawn, Tyrion confirms, setting down the parchment. Fully grown and capable of carrying riders. Melisandre steps forward from the shadows, her red eyes blazing with religious fervor. R'hllor's fire made manifest, the prophecy unfolds as the flames foretold. What prophecy? Stannis demands. The prince that was promised, Your Grace, born amidst salt and smoke to wake dragons from stone. The signs are clear. The signs, Tyrion observes dryly, suggest we have a new claimant to deal with. One with significantly more firepower than the rest of us. Stannis rises from his chair and walks to the window overlooking the city. In the distance, the ruins of the great sept of Baelor still smoulder from Melisandre's purges. The site has become a symbol of his reign. But now he wonders if it was folly to burn the old gods so completely. Send word to our commanders, he orders. Double the watch on all approaches to the city, and send ravens to the wall. Jon Snow should know what flies toward his shores. Far to the north, the black castle of the Night's Watch receives the news with typical stoicism. Jon Snow reads the raven's message in the common hall, while his sworn brothers eat their evening meal around him. Dragons, mutters Samwell Tarly, his round face pale with wonder. Maester Aemon will want to hear of this immediately. Jon folds the parchment carefully, his mind working through the implications. He has spent months hearing reports of the chaos in the south, but dragons change everything. His father spoke sometimes of the Targaryen rulers, of the madness and the glory that ended at the Trident. What does this mean for us? Asks Gren. Nothing changes, Jon says firmly. Our duty is to the wall and the realm, not to any single ruler. The dead don't care who sits the Iron Throne. But even as he speaks the words, Jon knows that dragons will change everything. The Game of Thrones has become something larger and more dangerous than petty squabbles between ambitious lords. Back in Dawn, Daenerys walks through the Water Gardens with Prince Oberyn, who has returned from his northern campaign, bearing news of the great victory at God's Eye. The Red Viper's dark eyes study the young queen with obvious appreciation for both her beauty and her power. 20 years, he tells her, as they pause beside a fountain shaped like a dragon. 20 years I've waited for justice for my sister and her children. Stannis gave me Tywin Lannister's blood, but justice delayed is justice denied. And what justice would you have from me? Daenerys asks. The same that all of Dawn craves. Recognition that the Targaryens remember their friends, that when you reclaim your throne, those who supported you will be rewarded. And those who opposed me? Oberyn's smile is sharp as a blade. Let them burn in dragonfire, as dragons were meant to burn their enemies. The negotiations continue through the evening, as Doran weighs his options with characteristic caution. Supporting Daenerys means breaking faith with Stannis, potentially triggering a new round of warfare. But dragons represent power of a sort Westeros has not seen for generations. My brother fought beside Stannis Baratheon, Doran points out during their private discussions. Dornish blood was shed to secure his victory. Honor demands we consider our existing commitments. Honor, Daenerys replies, or fear. Stannis may have won one battle, but he rules through conquest, not right. I am the blood of the dragon, the rightful queen. Support me, and Dorne will hold a place of honor in the new kingdom. And if we refuse, then you will burn with the rest, she says simply, her violet eyes hard as steel. The threat is not delivered with malice, merely stated as fact. Dragons make such conversations simpler in many ways. That night, as the court of Sunspear debates in whispered conversations, Varys reveals his hand at last. The spider has been playing a longer game than anyone suspected, and the arrival of dragons vindicates years of careful planning. In a chamber beneath the Red Keep, the Master of Whisperers meets secretly with agents who have served him for decades. Their faces are hidden by shadows, but their loyalty is absolute. The Dragon Queen has returned, he tells them softly. Everything we have worked toward comes to fruition now. And King Stannis, asks one of the shadows, will serve his purpose until he no longer can. The realm needs stability, but it also needs the right ruler. Daenerys Targaryen represents both the old blood and new ideas. She will break the wheel that has crushed the small folk for generations. The transition will be difficult. All births are difficult, Varys replies, but the result justifies the pain. Meanwhile, in the chamber above, Tyrion works late into the night reviewing defensive plans and supply reports. The hand of the king bears the weight of a kingdom suddenly threatened by forces beyond conventional warfare. A soft knock interrupts his thoughts. One of his agents enters with news that makes his blood run cold. My lord, word from our spies in Dorne. Princess Daenerys has agreed to marry Prince Quentyn Martell. The alliance is sealed. Tyrion sets down his quill carefully, his mind racing through the implications. A marriage alliance between Targaryen and Martell changes everything. Dorne's spears joined with dragonfire creates a force that could sweep Stannis from power in months. How long before they march? He asks. Weeks, my lord, maybe less. The dragons make travel expeditious. Outside his window, the lights of King's Landing twinkle like stars. But Tyrion knows those lights may soon be replaced by dragonfire if they cannot find some way to counter this new threat. He begins writing letters, his pen scratching against parchment as he works to forge new alliances and strengthen old ones. The game has changed again, and survival depends on adapting quickly to new rules. The next morning brings reports of the first dragon attack on Westerosi soil in nearly 3 centuries. A Lannister patrol in the Western Reach encounters Drogon while hunting down the last holdouts, loyal to Tywin's memory. The survivors describe a nightmare of fire and fury as the black dragon descends from the sky like death itself. Horses flee screaming while men burn in their armor. Within minutes, an entire company of cavalry is reduced to ash and charred bone. It's not war, one terrified soldier tells his commanders. It's slaughter. Nothing can stand against dragons. Nothing. The reports spread through the realm like wildfire, carried by ravens and riders to every castle and village. After generations of stories and legends, dragons have returned to the world with all their terrible majesty. In the throne room of the Red Keep, Stannis receives these reports with growing grimness. The Iron Throne seems smaller, somehow, when faced with creatures that can melt it, to slag with their breath. Your Grace, Tyrion advises, we must consider negotiation. Dragons change the fundamental nature of warfare. Our armies become irrelevant if we cannot protect them from aerial attack. You counsel surrender? Stannis' voice carries dangerous undertones. I counsel survival. There may be ways to fight dragons, but they require resources and time we may not have. Melisandre steps forward with fire dancing in her eyes. The Lord of Light will protect his chosen champion. Fire cannot kill a dragon, but neither can dragons kill the righteous. Dragons killed plenty of righteous men in the old days, Tyrion points out. Righteousness makes poor armor against dragon fire. The debate continues as reports flooded in from across the realm. Some lords declare for Daenerys immediately, terrified by tales of dragon attacks. Others dig in deeper, preferring death to surrender. But everyone knows that the game has fundamentally changed. The age of conventional warfare is ending. The age of dragons has begun again. In the distance, 3 winged shadows circle over Blackwater Bay, like harbingers of a new world being born in fire and blood. The Dragon Queen has come home at last, and Westeros will never be the same. The final phase of the Game of Thrones is about to begin, and this time the stakes are measured not in crowns or castles, but in the very survival of the realm itself. Dragons have returned to the world, and the world must learn to fear them once again. The greatest convergence of armies since Aegon's conquest spreads across the fields outside King's Landing as 4 powers clash for the fate of Westeros. Dragons circle overhead while the banners of stag, dragon, direwolf, and sun and spear flutter in the winter wind that carries the scent of snow from the north. Stannis Baratheon rides the center of his battle line with Lightbringer blazing like a piece of the sun. The rightful king has summoned every loyal house to defend his crown against the Dragon Queen, who would steal it with fire and fear. Today we decide the future of the 7 kingdoms, he calls to his assembled lords. Stand firm, and history will remember this day as the moment when justice triumphed over tyranny. To the south, Daenerys Targaryen sits astride Drogon's massive form as her dragons dance through the sky above the Dornish host. The mother of dragons wears simple battle leathers, but the crown of old Valyria gleams upon her silver hair like molten gold. Dracarys, she whispers, and dragonfire washes over a company of Stannis' cavalry. Men and horses disappear in a column of flame that reaches toward the grey sky. The battle erupts with the fury of 1,000 thunderstorms. Steel rings against steel as armies crash together like breaking waves. But this is no ordinary battle. Magic walks the field alongside mortal men, and the very air crackles with supernatural power. Tyrion Lannister struggles to maintain formation as his men fall back before the dragon assault. The hand of the king has seen many battles, but nothing prepared him for the terror of facing creatures from legend made flesh. "Scorpions!" he shouts to his engineers. "Bring up the scorpions." The massive crossbow weapons emerge from their concealment, their iron-tipped bolts gleaming as crews prepare to test whether dragons can be brought down by mortal weapons. Meanwhile, Robb Stark leads his northern cavalry in a flanking maneuver designed to strike at the Dornish rear. The king in the north has honored his alliance with Stannis, but his heart pounds with the knowledge that this may be the last battle for northern independence. Grey Wind runs beside his horse, the direwolf's eyes reflecting the dragonfire that illuminates the battlefield. Together, king and wolf charge toward their destiny. But as the armies clash in mortal combat, a lone rider approaches from the north on a lathered horse. Jon Snow has ridden harder than he has ever ridden in his life, changing mounts at every way station as he races to bring word of a threat that makes all earthly conflicts seem petty. The wall has fallen. He reaches the battlefield as Viserion strafes Stannis' infantry with golden flame. Men scatter like leaves before the dragon's assault, but Jon's attention fixes on something else entirely. A darkness on the northern horizon that grows larger with each passing minute. "The dead!" he screams, his voice somehow carrying over the din of battle. "The dead are coming!" The words hit the combatants like a physical blow. Ancient fears stir in every heart as men look north and see the truth of what approaches. An army of the dead marches on King's Landing, led by creatures of ice and malice that have not been seen for 8,000 years. The Night King rides at the head of his host on a dead horse that breathes clouds of frozen air. Behind him march thousands of wights, fallen soldiers from a dozen battles, their blue eyes glowing with cold fire as they advance in perfect silence. Stannis sees them first from his elevated position. The king, who has never shown fear in any earthly battle, feels ice in his veins as he witnesses the army of legend approaching his capital. "Form square," he roars. "All armies form square. Face north." The command echoes across the battlefield as the meaning sinks in. The Game of Thrones has become meaningless in the face of extinction. Daenerys wheels Drogon around as she spots the approaching darkness. The dragon's roar echoes across the field as he senses the wrongness of the creatures below. Dragons know death when they see it, and these things are death given form. "What are they?" she calls down to Jon Snow, who has reached her position on the field. "The others," he shouts back. "The White Walkers, the enemy of all life." Understanding passes between them in that moment. Jon Snow may be a bastard of the North, but Daenerys sees something in his eyes that speaks to the dragon blood within her. Here is a man who has seen the true enemy. The dead crash into the southern armies like a tide of winter. Swords shatter against creatures made of ice, while the whites feel no pain, no fear, no mercy. They come on in endless waves, pulling down knights and common soldiers alike. Melisandre appears at Stannis' side with her hands raised toward the sky. "Rolla!" she cries. "Lord of Light, drive back the darkness." Fire erupts along the battle line as her prayers take physical form. The Red Priestess burns brighter than any torch as she channels her god's power against the ancient enemy. But even divine fire struggles against the Night King's magic. Ice and fire clash in the sky above the battlefield as two forms of supernatural power test their strength against each other. Tyrion fights beside his king as the dead press closer to the center of their formation. His clever mind works frantically, seeking some strategy that might save them from this nightmare. "Dragons!" he shouts to Daenerys. "The dragons can burn them. Fire kills them." Daenerys needs no further encouragement. She drives Drogon into a steep dive, the great dragon's flames washing over ranks of whites. The dead burn like tinder, their animated corpses crumbling to ash under dragon fire. Viserion and Rhaegal join the assault, their combined flames creating a wall of fire that holds back the tide of death. But for every dozen whites that burn, 100 more take their place. Jon Snow fights his way through the chaos toward the Night King himself. The bastard of Winterfell carries Longclaw, the Valyrian steel sword that can kill White Walkers with a single stroke. But reaching the enemy commander means cutting through an army of the dead. Robb Stark sees his half-brother's desperate charge and spurs his horse forward. "The North remembers!" he cries, leading his men in support of Jon's attack. The two Stark boys fight side by side for the first time since childhood, their swords flashing in the firelight as they carve through whites and White Walkers alike. Grey wind tears into enemies with savage fury. while Ghost materializes from the shadows to stand beside his master. Meanwhile, Stannis and Daenerys find themselves fighting back to back as the battle swirls around them. The rightful king and the would-be queen put aside their claims to the throne in the face of extinction. "Your Grace," Stannis says formally as Lightbringer cleaves through a White Walker, "I believe we have a common enemy." "Indeed we do," Daenerys replies, driving Valyrian steel through another icy creature. "Perhaps we might discuss terms after we survive this." The suggestion of alliance spreads through both armies as word passes from soldier to soldier. Lords who were ready to die for their chosen monarchs now fight for the simple right to see another dawn. But the Night King has not come unprepared. The ancient creature raises his arms toward the sky, and the very air grows thick with supernatural cold. Ice begins to form on weapons and armor as his magic reaches its peak. One of the dragons, brave Viserion, falters in his flight as ice crystals form on his wings. The golden dragon struggles to stay aloft, but the Night King's power drags him down toward the army of the dead. "No!" Daenerys screams as her child crashes among the whites. The Night King approaches the fallen dragon with deliberate steps. When he touches Viserion's great head, blue fire replaces the golden flames. The dragon rises again, but now he serves the darkness. The sight breaks something in the living armies. Men begin to flee as the dead dragon takes to the sky, with ice fire streaming from his jaws. Even the bravest knights lose their nerve when faced with a creature of legend turned to evil purpose. But Jon Snow presses forward, Longclaw singing in his hand as he cuts down White Walkers. Each one that falls takes dozens of whites with it, their animation broken when their master dies. "The Night King!" he shouts to anyone who can hear. "Kill the Night King and the rest fall!" Daenerys hears him and wheels Drogon toward the enemy commander. Mother and dragon dive toward their target, with murder in their hearts. But Viserion intercepts them with claws and ice fire. The two dragons clash in the sky above the battlefield, their roars shaking the earth as brother fights brother. Daenerys weeps tears that freeze on her cheeks as she's forced to fight her own child. Meanwhile, Tyrion spots something that others have missed. The Night King stands in the center of his army, seemingly invulnerable, but his attention is fixed on the dragon battle above. For just a moment, he's distracted. "Archers!" Tyrion bellows. "Dragonglass arrows! Now!" A volley of obsidian-tipped shafts whistles through the air toward the Night King. Most shatter harmlessly against his supernatural defenses, but one finds its mark between the plates of his ice armor. The ancient creature staggers, his connection to his army wavering for a crucial instant. And in that instant, Jon Snow strikes. Longclaw takes the Night King in the chest, Valyrian steel piercing through magical protection. The creature's blue eyes widen in something that might be surprise before he shatters like glass hitting stone. The effect is instantaneous and devastating. Every white on the field crumbles to dust. Every White Walker explodes in shards of ice. Even dead Viserion falls from the sky, the blue fire in his eyes extinguished forever. Silence falls over the battlefield like a blanket of snow. Thousands of soldiers stare at the empty field where an army of the dead stood moments before. Only scattered ash and broken ice remain to mark their passing. Jon Snow stands over the Night King's remains, with Longclaw still in his hand. Blood runs down his face from a dozen wounds, but his grey eyes burn with the knowledge of victory bought at terrible cost. Stannis approaches first, his crown askew and his armor dented. The rightful king looks at the bastard boy who saved them all and does something unprecedented. He kneels. Jon Snow, he says formally, his voice carrying to every corner of the field. The realm owes you a debt that can never be repaid. Daenerys lands Drogon nearby and dismounts, her face still wet with tears for her lost child. She looks at Jon with new eyes, seeing not just a bastard, but something more. "The prince that was promised," she whispers, the words carrying the weight of prophecy. Melisandre appears at Jon's side, her red eyes blazing with religious fervor. "Born amidst salt and smoke," she intones. "Salt of tears and smoke of dragonfire. The signs are clear." Jon looks at the assembled armies, at the kings and queens who now look to him for leadership. The wall may have fallen, but the realm still stands, because they found a way to fight together when it mattered most. "The dead are defeated," he says simply, "but the living have work to do." Around him, the survivors begin to cheer. The sound starts small, but grows until it echoes across the field, like thunder. They have faced the end of the world and emerged victorious, but only by standing together. The Game of Thrones will continue, but it has been forever changed by this day. Some truths cannot be denied, even by kings and queens. In the distance, the first light of dawn breaks over the horizon. The long night is ending, and a new day begins for the Seven Kingdoms. But in the ashes of the battlefield, new alliances are being born that will reshape the realm in ways none of them can yet imagine. The age of ice and fire has passed. The age of what comes next is about to begin. The great throne room of the Red Keep has never seen a gathering like this one. Kings and queens who fought each other mere hours before now sit at the same table, their crowns dim beside the magnitude of what they have survived together. The Iron Throne sits empty while they debate the future of a realm forever changed. Jon Snow stands before them all, still wearing the blood-stained leathers from the battle against the dead. The bastard of Winterfell has become something more in the eyes of every lord and lady present, though he seems unaware of the transformation. "The wall has fallen," he reports, his voice carrying the weight of 8,000 years of history. Castle Black lies in ruins. The Night's Watch as we knew it no longer exists. Stannis Baratheon leans forward in his chair, his crown reflecting the light from a dozen torches. What of the other castles? Eastwatch? The Shadow Tower? Abandoned or destroyed. A few scattered survivors made it south, but the watch is broken. Jon's grey eyes meet each ruler in turn. The realm's first line of defense is gone. Daenerys speaks from her place at the table, her silver hair still smudged with ash from dragonfire. "Then we must build a new defense. The dead may be defeated, but they will return eventually. Evil always returns." "Aye," agrees Robb Stark, his own crown sitting askew after the day's fighting. "But that's a problem for our children's children. Today we must decide how to govern a realm that nearly died." The debate continues through the afternoon, as lords and ladies who commanded armies hours before now struggle with the complexities of peace. Some call for Stannis to remain sole king, his victory over the dead proving divine favor. Others argue for Daenerys' claim, her dragons having turned the tide at crucial moments. But it is Tyrion Lannister who speaks the truth, they all know, but none want to voice. "We cannot go back to the old ways," he says, his clever voice cutting through the arguments. "Today proved that the realm's survival depends on cooperation, not conquest. Perhaps it's time for something new." "What are you suggesting?" Stannis asks, his tone carefully neutral. "A great council, Your Grace. Not just for this moment, but as a permanent institution. Let the major houses have a voice in governance. Share the burden of ruling among those capable of bearing it." The suggestion sends murmurs through the assembled nobility. The idea of limiting royal power appeals to some while terrifying others. Melisandre steps forward from the shadows where she has been watching silently. Rulla's flames show me truth, Your Grace. The prince that was promised has fulfilled his destiny, but the song of ice and fire continues. New harmonies must be found. Her words hang in the air like incense as all eyes turn to Jon Snow. The bastard shifts uncomfortably under their scrutiny, but before he can speak, the great doors open to admit an unexpected visitor. Howland Reed enters the throne room with careful steps, his weathered face grave beneath grey hair. The Lord of Greywater Watch has come south bearing secrets that will reshape everything they thought they knew. Your Grace, he says, bowing to Stannis before turning to face Jon. My lord, there are truths that must be spoken. Truths your father made me swear to keep. Jon frowns, confusion clear in his features. Lord Reed, I'm not sure what— You are not Ned Stark's bastard, Howland interrupts, his voice carrying absolute certainty. You are the son of Lyanna Stark and Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, born at the Tower of Joy. Born in a bed of blood while your mother made Ned swear to protect you. The revelation hits the throne room like a physical blow. Lords gasp and whisper, while queens stare in amazement. Jon staggers as if struck, his face pale with shock. That's impossible, he whispers. I'm nobody. I'm just a bastard from the north. You are Aegon Targaryen, Daenerys breathes, rising from her chair. My nephew, the heir to the Iron Throne by right of blood. No, Jon says firmly, backing away from the implications. I don't want it. I never wanted any crown. The north is my home. The wall was my duty. But the assembled lords see the truth written in his face. The Targaryen features that mark him as dragonborn, the way he survived dragonfire during the battle, the natural authority that led them all to victory. The bloodline is clear, Stannis says slowly, his rigid sense of justice warring with his own ambitions. If Lord Reed speaks truth, then Jon Snow, Jon Targaryen, has the superior claim. Blood doesn't make a king, Robb interjects, loyalty to his brother overriding political calculation. Jon has spent his life serving others. He deserves the choice to refuse. Does he? Asks Tyrion thoughtfully. The realm needs leadership. Not just any leadership, but the kind that unites rather than divides. Today proved that Jon Snow, whatever his true name, commands that kind of loyalty. The debate rages for hours as the implications sink in. A Targaryen restoration with a king who doesn't want the throne, a bastard revealed as true-born, a hero who saved the realm now being asked to rule it. Meanwhile, in the courtyard below, common soldiers tend their wounds and share ale with men they fought against that morning. The great battle has created bonds that transcend old loyalties and ancient grudges. As evening approaches, the council reaches a decision that surprises everyone, including themselves. The Iron Throne will remain, Stannis announces, his voice carrying the authority of a lifetime of command. But it will be held jointly. Jon Targaryen as King of the Seven Kingdoms by right of blood, Daenerys Targaryen as Queen and co-ruler by right of conquest, and the Great Council of Lords will advise both rulers on matters affecting the realm. And what of you, Your Grace? Daenerys asks. I will serve as Lord Protector, responsible for military defense and justice. The realm needs structure, and I know how to provide it. Stannis' smile is grim but genuine. Besides, I've grown tired of sitting on uncomfortable chairs. The arrangement pleases no one completely, but satisfies everyone partially. Jon accepts the crown reluctantly, understanding that duty sometimes requires sacrifice. Daenerys agrees to share power in exchange for acceptance of her claim. The great houses gain a voice in governance while accepting royal authority. There remains the matter of faith, Tyrion points out. The Sept of Baelor lies in ruins. The faith of the Seven demands justice for the destruction of their holy places. Melisandre steps forward with uncharacteristic humility. R'hllor's fire burns brightest when it illuminates truth, not when it destroys what others hold sacred. Perhaps the Lord of Light and the Seven can find common ground in service to the realm. The religious compromise proves easier than expected. Both faiths will be permitted to worship freely, with neither favored by the crown. The Sept of Baelor will be rebuilt as a monument to unity rather than dominance. As the Great Council concludes, Jon finds himself wearing a crown that feels heavier than any sword he has ever carried. The bastard boy who wanted nothing more than to serve honorably now bears responsibility for 7 kingdoms. "You'll do well," Daenerys tells him as they stand together on the Red Keep's battlements. "You have something most rulers lack, the respect of those you lead." "I don't know how to be a king," he admits. "None of us do in the beginning. But you have good advisors. Use them." Below them, King's Landing begins the slow work of healing. Soldiers help rebuild damaged buildings while merchants resume their trade. Life continues as it always does, adapting to new realities with remarkable resilience. Tyrion approaches with scrolls and ledgers, the endless work of governance already beginning. "Your Grace, there are matters requiring royal attention. Tax policies, trade agreements, appointments to the small council. Handle what you can," Jon says wearily. "I trust your judgment." "And the matters that require royal decision?" Jon looks out over the city, seeing the people who now depend on him for protection and justice. "Then I suppose I'll learn to decide wisely." The dwarf smiles and bows. "Very good, Your Grace. Shall we begin with the reconstruction budget for the wall?" As they turn to enter the Red Keep, ravens take flight from the rookery, carrying news of the new order to every corner of Westeros. The realm has a new king and queen, a new structure of governance, and a new hope for lasting peace. But in the distance, winter winds still blow from the north, carrying whispers of challenges yet to come. The immediate crisis has passed, but ruling is a different kind of battle, one that never truly ends. The Iron Throne has new occupants, but the Game of Thrones continues in subtler forms. Some things never change, even when everything changes. In the Godswood of the Red Keep, the heart tree weeps red sap like tears of joy. The old gods and the new have found their champions, and for the first time in generations, the realm faces the future united rather than divided. The age of cooperation has begun, though whether it will last depends on the wisdom and strength of those who must lead it. History will remember this day as the moment when Westeros chose survival over conquest, when kings and queens learned that true power comes from service rather than dominance. The wheel has not been broken, but perhaps it has found new ways to turn. 6 months have passed since the Night King fell outside King's Landing, and the 7 kingdoms bear little resemblance to the realm that once tore itself apart in endless war. The Iron Throne now hosts 2 crowns instead of 1, and the Red Keep bustles with the activity of a government learning to govern through cooperation rather than conquest. King Aegon Targaryen, still called Jon by those who knew him before, stands on the battlements overlooking the harbour, where dragons circle like living symbols of the new age. Drogon and Rhaegal have grown larger in the months since the battle, their presence a constant reminder that the old rules no longer apply. "The Northern Lords are gathering at Winterfell," reports Davos Seaworth as he approaches with the morning's correspondence. "They want to discuss the wall's reconstruction." Jon nods, his grey eyes troubled. "And what word from my brother?" King Robb confirms Northern support for the project. The Independence Treaty allows for joint defence of the realm's borders. Davos hands over a sealed letter. He also sends word that Lady Sansa has arrived safely at Winterfell. The news brings the first smile Jon has shown in days. His sister's return to the north represents one small victory in a war that cost them all so much. Meanwhile, in the throne room below, Queen Daenerys holds court with the measured grace of someone who has learned to rule through wisdom rather than fear. The Mother of Dragons wears a crown of Valyrian steel shaped like dragon wings, a gift from the smiths of King's Landing, who have grown proud of their dragon queen. "Your Grace," announces Tyrion as he approaches the Iron Throne, "the trade delegations from Braavos and Volantis await your pleasure." "Send them in," she commands. "The realm's prosperity depends on strong relationships across the Narrow Sea." The hand of the king, now serving both monarchs with equal dedication, bows and signals to the guards. Tyrion has thrown himself into the work of reconstruction with the fervour of a man given a second chance to prove his worth. The economic recovery has exceeded all expectations. Trade flows freely along roads, now protected by joint patrols of royal and northern forces. The great houses have found new ways to profit through cooperation rather than conquest. In the reconstructed Sept of Baelor, septons and red priests work side by side to tend the spiritual needs of a population learning to accept religious diversity. The rebuilt Sept incorporates elements sacred to both faiths, seven-pointed stars and flame motifs intertwined in stone and stained glass. The Lord of Light and the Seven have found common purpose, Melisandre tells Jon as they observe the evening prayers. Both seek to guide humanity toward the light. "And what of the old gods?" Jon asks, his hand moving instinctively to the pommel of Longclaw. They watch and wait, as they always have. "The heart trees remember everything, Your Grace. They remember the night that was averted." Far to the north, Winterfell rises again from the ashes of Theon's betrayal. The great keep has been rebuilt with southern gold and northern labour, its walls stronger than ever before. In the Godswood, Sansa Stark kneels before the heart tree, as she once did as a child, though the woman who returned bears little resemblance to the girl who left. "Sister," Robb calls as he finds her in prayer. "The builders want to know about the new tower designs." Sansa rises gracefully, her auburn hair catching the last light of evening. "Tell them to include a rookery large enough for communication with King's Landing. The kingdoms may be independent, but we must stay connected." "You've changed," Robb observes as they walk toward the Great Hall. "We all have. The question is whether we've changed for the better." The Great Hall of Winterfell fills with northern lords as evening falls. They have come to discuss the monumental project that will define the next generation, rebuilding the wall not just as a barrier, but as a symbol of the realm's unity in the face of future threats. 800 feet of ice and stone, reports Maester Luwin as he unfurls the architectural plans, but this time with foundations that dragons can patrol and defenses that both north and south can maintain. The project represents more than military necessity. It symbolizes the new Westeros, one where ancient enemies work together to protect what they all hold dear. Meanwhile, in the shadows of King's Landing, Arya Stark moves through the city streets with the silent grace of someone who learned to be invisible. The girl who once served as a cupbearer to Tywin Lannister now serves her brother as his eyes and ears in the capital. The Goldcloaks report no unusual activity, she tells Varys during one of their clandestine meetings, but Littlefinger's men still lurk in the darker corners. Lord Baelish remains a concern, the Spider agrees. A man like that never stops playing the game, even when the rules have changed. Then perhaps it's time to remove him from the board permanently. Varys studies the young woman with interest. Your brother the king would not approve of assassination. My brother the king doesn't need to know everything. Some justice must be delivered in shadows. The conversation reflects the new reality of governance, idealistic leaders protected by pragmatic servants who handle the darker necessities of rule. In the Red Keep's solar, Jon and Daenerys meet with their council to address the challenges that accompany their unprecedented success. Lord Stannis, now bearing the title Lord Protector of the Realm, presents the military assessments with his characteristic thoroughness. The standing army has been reduced by half, he reports, but what remains is better trained and better equipped. The great houses have agreed to maintain their own forces for regional defense. And the dragons? Jon asks, growing stronger daily. Drogon and Rhaegal could defend King's Landing against any conventional force. More importantly, their presence deters would-be rebels before they can gather support. Daenerys nods approvingly. The dragons have always been more effective as symbols than weapons. Fear prevents more wars than fighting wins them. The discussion turns to the delicate matter of succession. Both rulers remain young, but the realm requires certainty about the future. A marriage alliance, Tyrion suggests carefully, might provide the stability the kingdom needs. Not between your graces, your partnership transcends such conventions, but between your future heirs and the great houses. Speaking of which, Davos interjects, the Faith requests guidance on the legal status of the joint monarchy. They need to know how to record the arrangement in their chronicles. Record it as the first of its kind, Jon says firmly. A new model for a new age. Let history judge whether our experiment succeeds or fails. As evening deepens, ravens take flight from the Red Keep's rookery, carrying the regular communications that bind the realm together. Letters to Winterfell with orders for the wall's reconstruction. Trade agreements with the free cities. Intelligence reports from agents across the narrow sea. The machinery of government continues its work, but now it serves a larger purpose than mere survival. In the God's Wood of the Red Keep, the ancient heart tree weeps its red sap as the old gods bear witness to the new world being born. The faces carved in the white bark seem almost to smile as they watch humans learning to work together instead of tearing each other apart. Jon visits the tree each night, seeking the peace that comes from connecting with something older and more enduring than crowns or kingdoms. Tonight he is not alone. Daenerys joins him in the sacred grove, her silver hair gleaming in the moonlight. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing?" she asks as they stand before the ancient tree. "Every day," he replies honestly. "But wondering is better than the certainty that led to so much bloodshed. My ancestors conquered this realm with dragons and fear. We're trying to rule it with dragons and love. I'm not sure which approach is more dangerous." "Love," Jon says without hesitation. "Fear is predictable. Love makes people do impossible things." They stand together in comfortable silence as the night wind rustles the leaves above them. Around them, the city sleeps under the protection of dragons and the rule of kings who remember what it means to serve. In the distance, the lights of King's Landing twinkle like earthbound stars, 7 kingdoms united under 2 crowns, protected by creatures of legend, governed by leaders who learned that survival requires cooperation. The Game of Thrones continues, but the rules have changed forever. Some victories are measured not in conquests, but in the peace that follows them. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. It always does. But tonight, the realm rests secure in the knowledge that its protectors understand the difference between ruling and serving. Winter may come again, but when it does, the kingdoms will face it together. Dragons will fly alongside ravens. Fire will burn beside ice. And in the end, perhaps that unity will prove stronger than any throne. The wheel has not been broken, as Daenerys once promised. Instead, it has learned to turn more gently, carrying the hopes and dreams of millions toward a future none of them could have imagined. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.